Backs Between Two Wings. I'm your host, Emily Norman, and today we have Bill McGlynn with us, who started off as a donor and is now the president of the Recreational Aviation Foundation. They're an organization who aims to preserve, improve, and create recreational and backcountry airstrips. Bill, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Pleasure to be here, Emily.
Yeah, and so we like to start off by talking about our backgrounds. I knew you were going to come today with some amazing, incredible, backcountry strips. So I had to find maybe a nice sunset picture. I definitely don't have as much experience as you, but although it is a commercial airliner, the clouds, sunset, wing view, we still love it. So all good there. But tell us a little bit about what you got behind you.
Well, it looks like we were on a sunset theme.
There you go.
It's the competition who could get the best yellow and orange going on together.
Yeah, for sure.
This place is my favorite place on the planet. It's called Moose Creek, Idaho. It's one uniform one is the designator. And it's 50 miles from the nearest light bulb. It's way back up in the Idaho wilderness, kind of in the central part of Idaho. It's a beautiful place. The Forest Service created it as a ranger district. In fact, it's one of the oldest ranger districts in the country. And it was mainly used for firefighting back in the 30s and the 40s, and now it's used for recreation. And it's one of the places that we put a lot of emphasis to take care of. A lot of pilots, really love this place and come here often.
Yeah, I can definitely see why. I think I'm going to go favor that in ForeFlight right after we talk. And one day, maybe I'll get there. So thank you for inspiring me there.
I might be there.
Yeah. Perfect. We can meet up, and then we can also have another sunset photo challenge. See who wins next time.
Exactly.
So I know you always wanted to get into aviation and fly, but you didn't get into it until later in life. And then finally, you found your passion for backcountry flying. Take us through that a little bit.
I think I'm like so many other people that had the hook set when they were really young. I got a ride with a guy when I was 13. He actually let me fly the airplane. I couldn't believe I was flying the airplane. Set the hook so deep that all my life I just would hear an airplane go over and look up, But you know how it is. It's like when you're young, you don't have the money. When you finally have the money, you have kids and a family, and all those things kind of collaborated, and and a real busy career. All those things kind of collaborated to work against me for my personal flying career. I actually put in about 3 million miles on the back of United Airlines, flying all the way around the world multiple times during my work career, which kind of, it's just not enough. But finally, midlife, if you will, 45, I finally said, this is it. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And I committed to it and I got it done. And it's been just a great chapter in my life.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I honestly love about aviation. There isn't a lot of age discrimination. You can have that dream and passion at any age and hop into it. But so you got your private and, flying around. What led you to flying to some of the beautiful places like you have behind you?
I think that's also kind of a common story. As I got in the cockpit, I soloed. I was able to fly around by myself, and my instructor was worried that I was going to set a new record for the student that lasts the longest before the check ride. And so I was having such a great time just flying around that I didn't need a check ride. And he finally forced me to do it. And so I learned in tail draggers, but I couldn't find a DPE, a designated pilot examiner, that was checked out in a tailwheel airplane. So I had to start flying nose wheel airplanes just to get checked off. And once I did that, it was like the world was my oyster. I mean, I was flying around to different airports. I went to multiple places for breakfast, as you probably have done. And the path became a little bit too worn. In fact, the one place I wanted to go for breakfast was this place called Sulphur Creek Ranch, which is in it's very, very southwest corner of one of the wildernesses in Idaho, which is the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness. Sulphur Creek Ranch is just this incredible place to go. And they happen to serve a fantastic breakfast. So at any rate, I wanted to go there. I knew I had to get some backcountry training to do this because the airstrip there is about as wide as the breadth of one tire to the other tire on a 182.
Yeah.
So no room for error, in other words, right? So I started getting backcountry training then, but I really felt like right after I learned to fly, that was like chapter one of just flying pavement to pavement. And then chapter two, where it got better for me, was flying in the mountains, getting confidence in being able to fly down narrow canyons without seeing an airstrip in the windscreen. And doing things that just gave you a sense, not only the sense of freedom of being able to do something like that, because that is one of the big rewards, but the sense of accomplishment that it's like, wow, I can really fly this airplane really slowly, and I could do it really, really carefully and safely. I can even take people with me, and I can land where I need to land. And then the best part is you get out and go, holy cow, look where we are.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you're touching a little bit about that. Like, how does backcountry flying and the training and all those processes help you become a better pilot overall?
I think it's a lot like driving a car. I'll bet you when you go to work, you're probably able to have a cup of coffee in your left hand. Your phone is probably sitting in a cradle, because I know you're a really safe person. And but you can mess around with the radio, and you can do all of those things while you're traveling at plus 60 miles an hour down the road, within feet of other vehicles, right? And we take that for granted because it's all built into muscle memory by now. I think that's the goal, is that you got to get the airplane into muscle memory, where you don't even think about what you need to do in order to move the airplane one direction or the other, or slow it down, or and one of the problems people have in the backcountry is they make approaches way too fast, because they're terrified of stalling the airplane below the trees. But the point of it is that when you really build enough time and skills, and you get help doing that, it all becomes muscle memory at a point, and you don't even really think about what you're doing, but you're slowing the airplane down naturally. You're starting to, apply flaps and other things while you're looking at the runway, checking your airspeed, doing all those things, listening to the radio. And it all comes very naturally. I think that's when you've kind of arrived. And you're a better pilot for it, no question. Just like IFR skills builds a better pilot. But being able to keep the airplane at a certain airspeed while the rocks are going by 10 feet off your wingtip, that's a skill that that it takes time and patience to really develop it and get really, really good at it. I don't think it's a 10,000 hour thing, like like playing the cello. It is. If I played the cello, it would be 20. Okay, so
there you go. Same here, don't worry.
Yeah, same here. I don't think it's a 10,000 hour thing, but I do think there's time there, and you need to build the skills, and you need to be able to test yourself as you're going forward, so that you realize what your abilities are. We talk about this a lot with the AOPA, Air Safety Institute. Richard McSpadden and I have been working on this backcountry safety initiative. And that's been the biggest part of the topic, is how do you get a pilot to feel like the airplane is part of their anatomy? It's an extension of their arms and legs and brain. That's what you should be able to do.
Yeah, that's great. And kind of touching on that, you talked a little bit about, those solo moments and the first cross country, and then getting up to backcountry flying. Those are all big and kind of stressful and emotional moments, and you had mastered the stick and rudder skills, but then you're putting it in these very small spaces. What was that first experience like?
I'm not sure I could even hear the radio because of my heart pounding in my ears. So,
yeah.
And I just remember when I finally got the airplane off the runway, and kind of positioned or parked, and shut the engine down and got out, I took this huge gasp of air, and because I don't think I'd been breathing probably for about the last 5 or 6 minutes, and that gasp of air was just filled with the smell of pine. And now when I smell pine like that, it has this aura about it that it takes my brain back to that time. And it was like, that was such an invigorating moment, to realize I can do this safely. And I did that really well, and there are things that I'll improve next time, but I did do that well. And so the sense of accomplishment is tremendous. people that just do touch and goes, I always feel sorry for them, because it's like, wow, you're really missing out on the moment. It's like
Mhm.
you're already racing to the next moment. You could get out of the airplane, you know, stand there for a few minutes, maybe even pull out a chair and just cherish, you know, the last few minutes, you know, replay it in your head. They say that's what tennis players do all the time, right? That's how they become so great, is that they play moments in their mind, and that's the reason that when they go out and play, they're able to repeat those moments. And so I think even from a training aspect, but they're missing out on just these magnificent moments of accomplishment.
For sure. And so RAF obviously has aligned very much with, your passions and your goals. How did you get started in this organization?
I remember reading an article, and I remember it was in 2010. And the article was basically about how all these backcountry airstrips were being threatened and were being taken off the charts. Just because they weren't being used as much, and the public land managers that belong to places like the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service, their budgets were continually being crunched, so they had to make choices. And because they weren't hearing from the pilot community that much, they thought that's a decent choice, right? Pilot organizations would stand up and scream about something, but then they would relax,
Mhm.
thinking, okay, we made our voice heard. It's like it took more than that. So I so identified with the logic of all of that and the difficulty of it. I wrote them a check, you know, and then when I retired, I still felt so strongly about it that I thought, I'm going to personally get involved. I don't know exactly what I can contribute, but I'm going to start helping. And the RAF started out as 6 people, who agreed that they needed to do something, and now it's almost 10,000, and it's just like-minded pilots who all think that we need to cherish these places, but you can't just love them. You have to do things to keep them, you know, and everybody understands that. So probably half those members write us checks every year to say, here, let me help. And then probably a fifth of those are actually out there with a shovel, when we need them to be, swinging hammers or whatever to make improvements in these places. So for the Forest Service, for instance, we've taken over the maintenance of a lot of airstrips. So we take the responsibility on ourselves. And then we're totally dependent on our donors, to show up with money every year to say, here's money to help buy the equipment, buy the, the tools, buy the supplies, and do the work. And then the 1,000 members or so, the real active ones, jump in. But I feel like, this needed to be done for the 300,000 some pilots, right? Who might not ever get to go to some of these places if we didn't start to work on it. And now there's about 300 plus airstrips all across the United States that are somehow receiving benefits from the RAF.
That's incredible. And I'm so honored to, hear about the work you guys are doing and hopefully benefit from it one day whenever I get into this amazing flying as well. But what are some of the threats and concerns about these airstrips that you guys are, trying to protect?
Probably, on the public lands part, it's that it's either that they don't understand aviation and airstrips from the district ranger kind of view. It's either that, or they're concerned so much about their budget that they just don't have the money, to spare. And in those cases, that's where we can intervene and really make a difference. But I think the threat is, ongoing across the United States, because there isn't very much public land east of the Mississippi River, right? Most
Mhm.
of the public land, thanks to Jefferson, he acquired all of that in the West. But the East was already pretty much privatized. But what we see in the East now is that landowners, airstrip owners, are starting to get to that age where they're thinking about their estate and what are they going to do. And there are some beautiful places all over if you want to call it the Eastern United States, from the Mississippi East. There are opportunities for saving. And the threat is, once they're gone for good. Forget it. Don't even think about it. Move on, because and we have a lot of people that get hung up on that. But it's like, once they are really gone, they are it's a waste of time to try to get an airstrip reopened. It's just way too difficult. We were working on an airstrip in Maine, just to illustrate that. And it took the volunteers in Maine 12 years. 12 years
Oh gosh.
of going to meetings, calling people on the phone, writing letters, showing up, year in, year out. It took them 12 years to get an airstrip reopened to the public. And that's the kind of effort that it takes. And they just wouldn't say no. And we applaud them all the time as, kind of perfect angels.
For sure. And not only show up, but show up in the orange shirts, right?
Yes, that's it. You're absolutely right. The trick in the beginning was you could be in the audience, but nobody would know that you were a pilot or that maybe you were representing aviation. And most of these public lands managers who were having these public hearings didn't really know what to do with pilots. It's like, well, maybe you fit in with backpackers, or maybe you fit in with the motorcycle crowd, or maybe you fit in with the horse people, but they couldn't categorize, where we belonged. And they couldn't recognize us in the audience until the orange shirt. You wear this orange shirt and you go to the meetings, and the public managers running the meetings will often say, who are those guys in the orange shirt?
What do they want? What are they doing?
Like, yeah, they're always here. Like they show up every time and they always sit in the front. Who are those guys? And it's like, so part of it was mystery. And then they usually would, after the meeting say, hey, who and what are you guys about? And we would explain it. We'd get a chance to do our elevator speech. So, our motto has always been that we want to be personal, professional, persistent, and patient, right? That's how you win these things. Personal means you want to actually become their friend. You want to be on a first name basis. You don't want to be a threat. You want to be professional because they are too. But then you want to have, you got to be persistent. You got to show up at every meeting. You got to do what you said you were going to do. You have to do all those things extremely well so that you have credibility with them. And then you got to be patient because the wheels turn really slowly. And that's true on private airstrips as well.
I definitely want to thank you and all the volunteers at RAF, because I know it's all volunteers that are keeping these opportunities open for pilots like me and across the industry. So thank you guys so much for that. And also, I want you to name a few other of your top backcountry airstrips to go to for me and everyone listening once we get into this amazing flying.
Okay. So if you want to really... Yeah. I know you're in Texas, so and we talked about that. Yeah. That's a little hard still, but we're working on it. We're working on it. But if you ever were to get up to Idaho, I would really encourage you to try a couple places. Smiley Creek, Idaho. I don't have the identifier in my head. I apologize.
It's okay. There's an app for that.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I've heard of this company. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I would encourage you to try out is Garden Valley, Idaho, which is Uniform 88. And it is one of the perfect places to actually practice some of these skills that we were talking about. Because it's a real easy approach from the west, and it's more difficult approach down a canyon from the east. So you can kind of build up to, being able to fly in some maybe difficult airspaces, but you can start out in really simple and easy stuff.
Well, that sounds great. And Bill, thank you so much for coming on Between Two Wings. It's been so fun talking to you today.
Same here, Emily. Make sure that you head for the backcountry.
I will, and I will keep you posted on when I do that. Lots of photos, for sure.
All right, awesome. Thanks.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode Between Two Wings. We'll see you next time.